I'm just building up momentum. We're gonna be all right. Just let me
You literally
hydrate.
look like you just woke up.
Thank you, Elias. Piss off to you too.
He hasn't been up too long. Don't let him.
What are you talking about? I woke up at like 9 or 10.
No, you've
I
been
got
so
out of bed
good.
around 11.
It's Sunday.
That's good. Oh God.
This episode got pretty serious at times. I know that I got triggered in some parts. We were arguing about how serious COVID is and what should be done about it. Sadie in particular, Sadie and I in particular disagreed pretty strongly about how serious of a problem COVID is. She asked why maybe we aren't paying as much attention to other leading causes of death, and if maybe the media is hyping up the severity of COVID. And I think those questions could maybe suggest that COVID is not as bad as it seems. I think probably plenty of people have asked themselves that. Social distancing has been really hard on people. People have lost jobs, people have lost homes. So before the podcast starts, I want to steal this moment to say that I don't think that COVID-19 has been overhyped. We all know someone who has lost somebody to COVID. You could probably say the same thing about cancer, except that COVID has only been in the US for half a year. It's on track to be the third leading cause of death this year, and that's with all the work that's been done to stop the spread. We don't know if it'll get worse in the winter. I'm really glad we got to have this conversation. It's incredibly stressful at this time, and on behalf of the Bigger Fish team, I want to wish that everyone stay safe and healthy. So here it is.
Did you know that in France, apparently it's illegal for your boss to contact you after 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Like once you're out, you can't talk to them anymore. Just little things like that. What? No!
No message.
You can turn your whole phone off. No contact. I gave you my 8 hours. Actually, it's more like maybe 6 in France. I gave you my 6 hours, and now we're done.
Yeah, they work like half an hour a day over there.
Yeah.
We just sound jealous.
Honestly, I'm a little bit jealous. Just a little bit jealous.
I'm jealous.
We gotta find like a healthy mix between what we do now and like the siesta culture, because I look at it and I feel like as an employer or as an employee, I'd be down for it. But if I'm an employer, it's like, I don't want to open a business here. What do you mean you're all going home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? No, and then you come back.
I guess when you think about it, like, there's like perks to it too, like having your employers, when they do get back, they're pumped, like in a good mood, willing to work more even. Like, I don't know how bad it would be, I guess, like economically for a boss, because then, you're just investing in the people that are working for you. So maybe it could be good. I don't know.
What? No,
the economy of Spain is a little bit different. It's not.
It's not doing that well. But there's not like that much poverty, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, but is it because of the siesta culture or because of something else?
I mean, I'm sure we could find a couple of factors of which workplace culture might be one. And then other things like innovation and like just general. I don't know. I'm not a Spain expert.
No, yeah, me neither. But like siesta equals fiesta. Okay. I don't know, guys. Sounds good to me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Just a joyful way to life. I think that's a big part of it too. Like, you're not just like defining yourself by your work. I feel like when you have a siesta culture, you're like adopting the idea of like, this job does not define me. I'm here for my pay and that is it. And then I have life outside of work. Here it's like people define themselves by their jobs and define themselves by, oh my God, I'm working so hard and I hate my job, but I'm still doing so well at it and all of that stuff. When it's like, we gotta find more fulfilling stuff to invest in.
How much of that is like, do we do that to ourselves? And like, how
I think it's all self-driven, a lot of it. Or no, maybe like 80-20. No, 60-40. Yeah, 60-40.
How much of it is
60-40 because-
capitalism?
Little-
How much of it is the man? How much
The
of it is
man.
free market capitalism?
I mean,
That
you have to
bastard.
buy into the system, but the system is like put upon you since when you first go into school when you're 5 or 4 years old. So I do think it's possible. I do think it's possible for people to unlearn things and like develop new ways of being, but it's a super hard thing to do, especially when you've been in a culture since the time you were young, right? Like it's always been like this: work hard, do follow the rules, just like always be mindful of deadlines and everything like that. And to a point, that's good, but we also have to take into account that the American education system was set up to produce factory workers. Like that's its entire structure. Since it was like created in the 1800s, it was just to say like, all right, you got to learn how to follow instructions. You got to learn how to meet deadlines. That's it. And it never favored any kind of like higher thought process or anything like that.
Well, I've always heard that, but like, I don't know. I don't know if I got that. It was like Ford just like going over to like the school teacher and being like, hey man, this is the kind of workers I need, and I'm gonna need them, you know, like 10 years out. So can you teach them all these skills? It's
Yes.
like, really?
Not Ford himself, but in conversations with the American government and with state governments that were setting up the curriculum at the time, there was the awareness that they needed a specific kind of worker for very, very specific kinds of jobs. So they said like, okay, we're gonna create it over time. And like with intention, they designed the American education system to fulfill that. And we just had a hard time changing it up.
I want to say that's evil, but that also seems like maybe we're doing that now also.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like now it's just like a matter of momentum. Once you have a system, you're not super inclined to change your system. Even if you are aware it's not giving the best outcomes, and it's like documented, the American education system is not producing the best outcomes for most of its people. But yeah,
Well, how do we
institutional malaise, man.
how do we decide who has a good system? Because I'll hear like some people talk about like Asia and like China and Korea, where they have these students who do like massively well on these tests, and yet at the same time we have this other side which is like, no, we shouldn't even like be like considering looking at the test. And it's like, I don't know, everybody seems to be like referring to like a different metric.
Well, I guess you would have to be recording different things, right? It depends on what your definition of a quality education is. And with that, there are definitely different definitions, right? Like if your definition is how well you read and how well you do mathematics, then I think amongst developed countries, America's like in the back, it's like maybe in the top 20, not even the top 10. Like
Right.
we're not doing well with that. And then when you compare to places like Singapore and Finland and South Korea, I think are the top 3 education-wise. You look and the way that they approach education as a matter of like understanding the theory behind stuff instead of like just telling people to memorize formulas and get it done like it's done in a lot of public school systems, from my experience. It lends itself to like a deeper understanding of things. But if your definition of education is that it's not so much that they should tell you exactly what you think, but just how to go about the process of thinking, it also seems like America's education system fails at that because, there's not much room for free thought and free expression. It's just like, all right, do this and then go home.
Like how much of it do we judge by like,
How much do you think?
Different-
I was going to ask about standardized testing.
Yeah, I think standardized testing is something I've heard a lot about with, it's like the culmination of the problem with the American education system, because a lot of schools receive funding and support based off how their kids do on the standardized test, and based on how they end. With that, there's an incentive for teachers to just teach what's on the test and then nothing else. And they just drill, all right, you're going to do good at this test, and then we're going to get more funding. And da. So you just created a generation of people who are really, really good at testing, but not necessarily great at like thinking out complex solutions to problems and critical thinking and all the other stuff you would hope your education system gives you. So yeah, we're screwed, guys. Have fun. The kids are the future, but hey, we didn't do anything with them. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I don't know. We turned out all right.
Uh,
No?
honestly, guys, if I'm honest, I started relearning how to do math after how long has it been? Like a 2-year hiatus. I'm doing it for the GRE. And like looking through and like trying to get like the helpful math tips and everything. Oh my God. Like once again, all appreciation to teachers as a profession, very noble. It's appreciated. Looking at the way some people do math and just like understand how they're going about it, what they're doing with it, I've started to think like, I might as well not have gone to any math classes. Like I didn't learn much of anything, but like we're just going through these videos and like looking at and starting to understand the actual theory behind it. I feel like if in my education, in one school, in one neighborhood of one city, we approach it as like just memorization, like get this done and you'll be fine. I feel like if we had approached it as more like, this doesn't have to be something that's a headache or a heartache for you. We can just like learn the theory behind this, and it's actually kind of fun to learn it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then from that, you come up with the ideas and you like build up from there. I feel like that would have given like a way better understanding.
No,
But I'm not sure that's how things are set up.
There was a bit of calculus in college where I was like, whoa, this is actually interesting. This is like so cool. Like, why did they make it so painful? Like same thing with like reading sometimes in class, like in school. I know like they would make it just like, I don't know, maybe it's just because it was in school. And it's like, oh God.
Yeah,
Great,
and
yes,
then you got your
Jesus
friends clowning
Christ.
you while you're reading. It's like, oh, it's not good. It doesn't build any kind of confidence. But then I was going through a whole identity crisis. Like, I was just up at like 1 o'clock in the morning running my calculations, and it was just like, do I kind of like math? What is going on? Like my entire educational identity was like, all right, I can do history, I can do English, and depending on the science, I can do some of it. But math, it's like, all right, we're just gonna call that a loss and write it off. Now I'm looking back and like thinking, maybe there are more possibilities than I thought. Who knew?
Maybe the way math is taught is just shit. Like, I don't know. It could be so discouraging hearing people say like, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. And it's like, no, it's just like, it was like not a great teacher or not a great method. Like there's nothing inherently like not exciting or interesting about that subject matter. Like
Exactly.
it's all interesting. You just have, I don't know.
And you want to know the another strange thing about it is, I was talking to a good friend of mine. Shout out to Sabina. Sabina is of South Asian descent, and right now she's off doing, I don't even understand what she's doing at Harvard, if I'm quite honest, like something molecular biology, mathematics. The girl is on a different level, and it's extremely math-based, and she tries to talk me through like some of the theoretical stuff she does, and I just suffer. I just blank out because I can't like quite lock in on it. But I was talking to her about, all right, just why does it seem that people from that part of the world, East Asia and South Asia, seem to do so good at math all the time? Like not even stereotypically anymore. Just like if you look at just pure data, the number of the people who go to engineering programs, PhD programs in science and mathematics, overwhelmingly from that part of the world, genetically. So I asked why. And Sabina told me that way back when we were about 12 years old, 11 years old, like she hated math too. Like no one likes math at that age. But what happened was her parents put her in a program called Kumon. And I don't know if you guys remember like those old school commercials, Kumon and Silver Learning Center. Yeah, the one with like the kid who has the face, the kid is not even smiling at their logo. The kid is just like, meh. He's just like looking out like that's the reaction to math. Just like, but the thing about Kumon is they actually try to approach math in this way. They try to approach it as like the theoretical way, and then let the kids build up from there. So that it like fosters a little bit more of a orientation towards like figuring out the why of math, just instead of just like, all right, this is what you do, like the rote formulas. So it sets them up to do better. So like by the time they're in high school, freshman math, they're already like thinking on the level of a junior doing math. So it's just like that much easier to get rid of the fundamentals. And when you're good at something, of course, you're going to keep doing it more and more and more. So we end up with the situation we're in now. Moral of the story, send your kids to Kumon
Right?
if you're looking for free advice.
That's what I was thinking.
This is not a Kumon sponsorship.
Look, if Kumon wants to give me, honestly, I would not mind being the only 24-year-old in a Kumon class right now. I'm like just sitting around with a bunch of 13-year-olds, all of us just trying to figure it out. It could be pretty good.
Do you need to do the GRE thing? Because I know a lot of places have taken that off of their like requirements.
Yeah, honestly, I've already taken it once, and the only reason I want to take it again is just to be that much more sure, like just in case, if it helps my case at all, like if I take it, I'm hoping to take it again in a couple of weeks. So if I happen to do really well on this one, I can be like, hey, it didn't hurt anything. If I don't do very well, I'll just be like, you know what, that never happened. That $300-something
Right.
that went somewhere
Yeah.
else. It's not great. It's not great.
The money.
The money is super unfortunate. Like there's no way around it. That's just tragic. And honestly, higher education is a racket
Dude.
if we really want to talk about it. But
Had to pay for the application, $100 for the application, 200. It was like 240 for the GRE. That's $300 for one college.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a problem, to be honest. And a lot of schools are like, granted, a lot of schools are making an effort to say like, hey, we'll waive the fee and all of that. But have you guys seen the news? A lot of places are making kids pay full price to go to Zoom University. Like you're gonna pay the whole like, what is it, $60,000 to do online classes. And obviously a
where?
lot of people to go to, I'm saying Zoom University, but it's like any given university that just happens to be using Zoom.
Oh God.
So all of these kids are going to shell out $60,000 for online classes, and understandably, people are up in arms about it. People are going wild, and the schools are like, "What do you want us? What? There's nothing we can do."
Like the really expensive schools, I was just talking about this.
Yeah,
Like how do you justify 50, 60,000 for like online classes?
well, one of the professors at NYU, this was a master class in just trolling, accidental trolling. So what happened was that, okay, for the other majors, like maybe physics or even like most other majors, I can understand like, okay, you're still sitting down with the professor. It's not the same, but you can make an argument. People at the Fine Art School of NYU sent in letters saying like, we actually need to be in person if we're like learning acting or we're learning theater or something like that, right? It just kind of makes sense. And one of a dance professor sent back a video of interpretive dance saying like, trying to express why it doesn't matter where you go, you can learn dance wherever you are. And they were flaming her on Reddit so badly. It was so fun. Just like that, this is the kind of attitude you've adopted while we're out here suffering. Why? Who made you like this?
mm.
That's some pretty good trolling.
Yeah, it's a whole racket. It's just all messed up.
Wait, are kids,
But
can't they just like drop out or just like be like, fuck this, I'm not going?
Yeah.
Are they
I mean, you could defer, but then that's like a whole year.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the issue is like a lack of choice. Right.
Mhm.
I mean, we're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
What do you
And
do?
then
You can't be like, I want to be in school, because then you also have to tell the professor they have to be in the building. And there's probably plenty of professors who are
Well,
like
like-
old and like who are worried about getting sick.
But so it just sounds like there's a value over health versus education, right? Like it kind of seems like that shouldn't even be an issue.
Right.
It shouldn't health over education. That's
Being
yeah, it
alive.
shouldn't.
Being
It
alive over
In the
education.
best case, right? But then you've got a lot of kids who are set up. There's a lot of kids who are like already paid. So they're like, hey, at least give us our money back. So that's like their own separate issue. And the university is like, nah, we're gonna figure this out, because somehow a lot of these schools are running at deficits. When you have billions of dollars in endowment, but you're running a deficit, that's opens up a whole new conversation. But like with the kids who have not paid yet, it's like when you're not going to school, what else are you gonna do? Like asking people to give like a year of their plans and their planning. Obviously, it's like the best kid thing to do in a situation like this, but it's still a hard ask. Like any kind of sacrifice of someone is a hard ask. So yeah, I feel like that's where our situation has come to. And it's like a little microcosm. In a way, it might be called a microcosm of like the situation we see with the economy, right? Like people saying, all right, should we reopen and help add some stimulus to the economy, or should we keep people at home and try to stay safe? And you know, there's arguments for both. Obviously, keep people alive is the best argument, but yeah,
It just
it's
sounds
still
like
a
a
hard
false
ask.
dichotomy. Sorry, like, because to me, it sounds like this could be solved by a more involved government. I don't know if that's what I want to say, but like, I don't think it has to be one or the other.
I
Right?
completely agree with that. And honestly, that's been my biggest takeaway from this. Like in a situation like this, you need more government, not less. And you should not have people feeling like they have to go out into a pandemic in order to survive when, you know, stimulus checks are a thing. Like we can keep this going for a little bit of time. But in the absence of like proper governorship and like proper leadership, this is the choice you have. So hopefully people
Right.
remember this. I'm hoping people remember this. People have some short memories, but with this one, at very least, hopefully people see that, you know, it didn't have to be this way.
Right. That it didn't have to be this way. It just
Yep.
it all just feels so disempowering. Because it's like, why is it this way? Like, I don't know. That's my take.
Mm.
What?
I think the kids now, like in elementary school, I don't know about high school, but they are going to be like social distancing. Like some of them are going back, but they're going to be social distancing. So lunchtime is going to be on your own in like a certain space. It's scary, and I feel so bad for the kids that are going to, like, I don't know specifically what schools. I forgot like who was telling me that their kid was going to go back. That's how it was going to be like. And I was like, can't imagine.
No, right, then what's the point? Like, isn't a part of it to socialize? And then also to call it social distancing is weird because like somebody could be within 2 feet of me and we're not being social, right? Like it's the
Yeah.
physical distance. So to then say to like extrapolate that out to being like, yeah, you have to sit by yourself and not be able to be within reach and also not be able to like interact, like that sounds dangerous, especially for kids.
Honestly,
I don't know. It seems like there's
it's
not
not
any.
gonna work out. It's just like, go on.
It seems like there's not any way to get around the fact that it's going to be a traumatic experience. Like even for kids, like it's going. Like it's. There's no good. It's not gonna be good. It's like literally like killing tens of thousands of people. It's killing thousands of people a day. Like it's gonna suck. It's just like I don't know. I guess the cost that we're willing to pay. Which ones we want? Which ones we choose?
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I don't think that's all of the issue, but that's what we're hearing the most. Like it sounds bad and it is bad at the same time though. Like I don't think that the numbers that we're hearing are being grounded in other similar situations that cause death or injury. Like,
How do you mean?
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, to me, it just sounds like here are the numbers. and this is just scary because these are the numbers, right? But there's no context. It's like, what does it mean though? Like how I don't know. That's just what I'm getting at. Like, what is the context in those numbers? Like, how does this compare to car accidents? How does this compare to like drowning or near drowning? Like, how does this compare to other things that happen every day?
I don't know when it was, but let me see. I'm looking at this headline from CNN. COVID-19 will end up as top 10 leading cause of death. I'm not sure if it's for the month or for the year.
Right. So what is the context?
But it's definitely, I don't know, at least I think probably maybe earlier in the pandemic, I think it was the leading cause of death. So
forever, like, and then also like, I don't know, it just, all of it bothers me so much. But anyways,
I kind of agree, because I would want to see what those numbers are compared to like heart attack or like
right,
diabetes in
cancer
US specifically.
right.
Yeah, I'd want to see what that means, or like how they are together.
Okay,
compared.
so this article was written last week at the end of July from CNN. So as of Thursday night, 144,000 people have died of COVID in the US. 144,000. Heart disease, it's 600,000. Cancer, it's about 600,000. Unintentional injuries, it's like 150,000. And then everything else, it's 100,000 or lower. Chronic lower respiratory disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes. So it's up there, like in like the top 5.
Where
COVID is. It would be like in the top 5.
Under respiratory disease?
Yeah, it'd be around there because we're not even at the end of the year.
So is it because it's under respiratory disease?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I had to see the article.
That's not it.
And then
I
also
think-
like, sorry,
No.
last thing, I feel like there's a different social expectation now to like, one, stay home if you're not feeling good, and then also to like go to the doctor. Because like before, honestly, if I got sick before now, I would probably stay home if I could stay home, one. But I would probably stay home for a day, feel a little bit better, then go back to work, right? Like this isn't this pressure to be like, not pressure, but then also like finally like being able to stay home and try to get better, or just even think to go to the doctor if I'm feeling off. Like this is all new. This isn't something that we can compare to other numbers, to me, because like before we didn't even have that. So like how many people died from the flu or like from similar respiratory issues but weren't able to get to the hospital before they died, or like before they could get treatment, right? Like to me, this is too different to compare to almost any other number before now. But that's just me. That's, yeah.
Yes, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. And it's one of the hardest things about like actually trying to compare and figure out what the actual impact of this is that from a data perspective, we just honestly don't know. Like, I remember reading an article saying like a lot of the trouble with COVID are actually reporting the death toll from COVID is that if you die of most anything else and you have COVID in your system, they will count it as a COVID-related death. And COVID does help. Obviously, it's taking out people that already had pre-existing health conditions. So you could have already had some kind of respiratory disease, and that might have been like the primary factor in death. But if they find COVID in your system, it's like, all right, that's a COVID one. So the numbers could also be inflated in that regard. I think a lot of like the social changes and a lot of the frenzy, I guess, that comes with this moment is that it's new. Whenever something new hits, like the flu has been around, cancer has been around, Alzheimer's has been around. It's like people have accepted that as just like part of life. So it's hard to actually actively attack the things that that you just get used to. With COVID, it was just like the news came about it was coming so fast and so dramatically, and like media did a big job in like creating a narrative about it. Not necessarily an incorrect narrative, but it was a narrative that was made that horrified a lot of people. So now you're in a situation where like, all right, we do actually have to overcompensate because people are terrified. No one wants to go outside anymore, and the economy is suffering for it. People are suffering for it because it is actually killing people. And now we're in a situation where, in perfect example, in Chicago, they converted like Merchandise Mart, which is like this giant convention center in the middle of the city. They actually converted it into an emergency field hospital, like brought in a bunch of beds, brought in like a lot of respiratory equipment. And I think in total, like 5 people ended up using that massive building. Like there was no need for it because like the initial surge had leveled off at that point. And I don't know if you guys in New York like were following the news about those Navy ships that were in the harbor, like helping people out. Like, were they super used? Did a lot of people have to be taken to them, or did it prove to be unnecessary?
There was one in Central Park that they took down after a few days because, yeah, it wasn't actually being used. But
Yeah.
it did alarm a lot of people when they saw it being built, and they,
Mm-hmm.
it was an impact physically, and like it wasn't actually used.
I don't remember who made the point, but they said basically that at this point, hundreds of people dying per week of this disease. Now it seems like normal. I think, what was it? In like mid-April, there were 150,000 deaths per week that were counted as COVID-19. For the peak week in flu season, there was like 750. Like it was in the hundreds versus tens of thousands. And the thing is at this point now, hundreds, we're like, oh, wow, that's good. We've got the deaths down to hundreds. And because the thing is it was relative, because before that it was in like the thousands. So it's not I don't think it's comparable to flu. And I guess I could see the idea that it's being alarmist, but also it's awful. It's like really, really bad. Like they're literally like digging like mass graves.
Again,
Rikers, was it Rikers or something?
It's not comparable because we didn't have that idea to go to the doctor when we had the flu. Like, again, like this is a completely different societal expectation. Like how can you compare it to flu season when before we just didn't do that? That's what bothers me the most, because like, yeah, it's just not, I don't know. Then at the same time, like you said, like what do these numbers mean? Like, are we always going to be alarmed by 100 deaths per week, or do we like where do we go from here is what I don't understand. Because again, like it just feels like it's here now. When do we stop caring? Like like, because like thinking about H1N1 or like SARS, right?
Yeah.
SARS was scary from my memory.
You guys remember Ebola? That was scary.
And that's a different story. But anyways, like SARS was terrifying back in the day, because like it was like, oh my gosh, like you can get this thing and have antibiotics and it still gets you. Like that's what I remember. But H1N1, I remember being in high school and like, again, people, like there wasn't this thing to like, oh, stay home, like if you're sick, like blah, like none of this happened. Absolutely none of this happened. But that was another thing that was new. Like I don't remember seeing death tolls every day, every hour. Like something's different. And I think it's more the media than new strains of the flu. Like I think that's always going to happen.
How many deaths were there from SARS?
Who knows? Because like back in the day, again, were they tracking SARS like they're tracking this now? Like by the hour, all the governors going up. Like I don't think that happened.
Yeah, I don't recall like this kind of frenzy over it. But
It was.
you also got to think like in the initial days, right? Like in the initial
Right.
days with Ebola, with H1N1, I remember on CNN there was like around the clock coverage. It was a really, really big thing. And then I think they noticed it was like, okay, this is not actually
Right.
getting as many people as we thought, so we're gonna scale it back and we're gonna focus in on some other stuff.
Right. So like
It's like it is actually getting a lot of people out of here. So it's like, all right, we can keep up with this because it is still big news in a way.
I feel like it's big news because like we're more connected, right? Like there's more
Okay.
interaction from us to different points of media, right? Like we have our phone, we can have like updates instantaneously as opposed to H1N1 in high school. Like smartphones weren't that much of a thing back then, right? Then back to SARS, like I don't think cell phones were even a thing, like not collectively, right? So like I kind of feel like we're being more manipulated than informed, right? Like
I don't.
it's good.
I think comparing the two, I'm looking at the number of deaths for SARS. There was 8,000 people killed worldwide. That's what we were looking at. Like, what was it like? I think like that's what we were looking at just in like, the United States over the course of like a very short period of time. And that was what it was worldwide. And there was only like 8 people that were confirmed to have SARS in the US. So they're not I don't think it's just media hype. I think
it is.
it is just that
Mostly.
bad.
I don't think so. Like I think the numbers could be true, sure, but how we're being told and like how the stories are being handled, I don't think that's the necessary part. That's what I'm getting at. And then to compare the two, like I'm not saying necessarily by the number, but like we were saying, the newness of the strains, right? Because like at first, yeah, we were all freaked out, but it wasn't like a by the hour report from my memory. This is me back in like middle school, maybe. So like maybe I just didn't hear about it. Who knows? But I just think, I don't know. I think the media has a lot to do with it.
There definitely is something to do with like the novelty of something. And I think this is like, when there was like thousands of deaths, from COVID, I think that really freaked us out. And now we're just like, hundreds, that's acceptable. We're totally fine with that. I think there is just like a factor of just like the novelty kind of wears off. And we're like, okay, wearing masks, going outside. And we all just like at work, we're all getting to be a lot less cautious. And like me, I was like super vigilant about it at first. But then, I don't know, there's just like some level of, you can't keep up, I don't know, that level of anxiety. Like your body just won't tolerate it or something. For whatever reason, you can't it's really hard to keep up that level of vigilance. And to be like so inconvenienced that like you can't see people, you can't go out to the park, you can't, go get groceries. And at some point we're just like, freak it. I'm just gonna do whatever I want. And a lot of it is selfish because we are endangering other people. But I think there's only so much you can expect of people. So the question
to do when they don't have any support, for sure. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Say it again.
No, I'm talking about like the individualistic burden because like we're not being supported by our government at all. So like you're getting to the point that like there is only so much that we can do on our own when we don't have access to, like, we're not even getting paid barely to stay at home. Like the amount of us having to bear the brunt of this pandemic just blows my mind. It blows my mind. But yeah, sorry.
I see that. I agree that the United States government has done a really bad job of handling the pandemic. That is for sure, compared to every other country that has done it. Maybe like Brazil. We're better than Brazil. I don't know if that's a great bar, but
Not just chime in, it's not, but please go on.
But I don't know, even in Korea, like they like snuffed that thing out, but
Because they literally snuffed them out.
Which Korea? You talk about South Korea or Best Korea? Don't talk about my boy Kimmy like this. Hold on, what do you mean snuff them out?
Didn't they kill people that had COVID?
what?
That's right.
Dang.
That's not what.
I don't think that. I hope that's not. I heard the same story. Some people. I'm pretty sure it's a hoax, but you never really know.
Why do I believe it? Okay, sorry.
Honestly, I believed it too, but I looked into it. It was a joke. It was fine.
Joke? It doesn't seem like a joke in other circumstances, but okay.
I mean, like North Korea, I could see doing that. But yeah, like I think somebody was commenting on South Korea and how they already had a culture of just like, I don't know if you call it like extreme hygiene, I guess, compared to like the United States, but like folks wearing masks whenever they get sick. So that wasn't a hard thing to enforce. Whereas like here, there's literally people protesting, like, I don't want to wear these masks. Like, shut up.
Yeah, I think that's where we got into like another part of the triangle of the problem. We're going to figure out what the third point is. But at least the second point of the triangle is that now we've ended up in a situation where it's been politicized in a big way. And of course, you've got like the average middle of the road people who are like, you know, I'm just tired. Like you described, like you can't keep up like this level of engagement for so long. And then you've got other people who are like, you're selfish. You want to go back and kill old people? What's wrong with you? Da 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 da. Other people are like, it's my right as an American to not wear a mask. And so it's like, I feel like the problem has grown outside of just like a public health concern into like an actual political concern for this year, considering we're in an election year, and beyond. So now you've got people who are actively trying to undermine the process because they feel like it's still a hoax. They feel like it's still not anything real. Like, have you guys heard about Corona parties as a concept?
Yeah.
Is it something like chickenpox party? Like where you actively try and get your child chickenpox?
We could go into that because that's kind of messed up. But no, with Corona parties, it's like they just like throw a party to see if anyone gets Corona. Like that's their entire motivation, just to see like if this is real or not. We're gonna throw a massive party. We're gonna see. We're gonna invite everyone, and I bet no one gets it. And recently in Florida, a kid died because he got Corona at one of these Corona parties. So it's like people on a certain level are just not taking it seriously because there are so many people for political reasons saying that you should not take it seriously. And that just has messed up the United States response to this even worse. You don't have those same kind of problems in Spain or in Germany or France necessarily, or even South Korea and Japan. It's just like they said, all right, we got to figure out, we got to lock this down for a little bit. And they tried, and obviously it wasn't 100% success, but they are having far better containment rates and are doing a better job opening up than the US is doing right now.
I think that a lot of that is just like American culture. We just have like that freedom streak. We're just like, yeah, man, you can't take away our rights.
That's the thing though.
And like, I do get that. I do like think that is like great part of our culture. Like,
It's
but
not
also, but
though,
then also,
man. It's not. I feel like it's not just because of obviously individual freedoms, great thing, but how easily they can be manipulated is the
Right.
issue here. Like when you are turning off Fox News and they're telling you that this is a whole constitutional issue, like that makes it feel like now you're hyping people up when really public health and individual freedom should not be a zero-sum game. You should not base your sense of freedom on how much danger you can inflict upon the people around you, right? But we've got a media that thrives off of like setting up false dichotomies.
well, I think it's the opposite almost like of, just because of the situation we're in, of like virtue signaling, like I'm a good person. Right now, it's like almost like the Republicans doing that kind of like, we're not PC. We like say it how it is. It's kind of like an FU to like the other side. And so now not wearing the mask and saying, yeah, I'm not going to stay indoors and I'm not going to follow your rules is just like it's a way to, signal like, yeah, we don't, do what the libs tell us to do.
Yeah, you got to own the libtards. That's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the point, man.
Like,
Everything to own the libtards.
literally.
I feel like that's not the case necessarily. And like I feel like the larger issue from what I'm hearing, right? Like is that we're taking the lack of resources, access to healthcare, access to like PPE, the ability to stay home, lack of unemployment benefits, stimulus checks, like all of that, something that the government should be providing, especially during a pandemic. We're taking all of that and seeing like, okay, we're not getting that, but how can we blame the individual for not doing XYZ thing, right? Because like, if someone's not wearing a mask, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not taking it seriously. Like, how many people have respiratory issues where they can't walk around wearing a mask? How many people like don't even have access to buy a mask, right? And then like,
I've literally seen homeless people wearing masks. I got into a fight with a customer at the store because he was being a smart ass with me, saying, I was like, sir, can you like pull your mask up? And he just kind of like ignored me. And then I said it again. And he was like, I am like too poor. I can't afford it. It's like, I literally, when I walked into the store, I saw a homeless guy wearing one. Like, don't give me that shit.
How you're pointing to one individual that got lucky to get a mask, right? Like there's no central effort from the government to provide every person in the country a mask, right? Like you have no idea why people aren't wearing a mask. Maybe they forgot, right? Like I'm just saying like there is no way to say because people aren't doing XYZ is because they don't care, right? Like there's no way to say, you have no idea. There's no way to know, right? But then what we do know is that we're not being provided any of this stuff, right? Like people barely have clean water, right? So how much of it is an issue on the individual to uphold public health when the government isn't doing anything to provide public health measures to the people, right? Like
the federal government
definitely, and we agree with that. I think just real quick, I feel like that is a fundamental part of the issue, like the federal government just failing in their duty, and that's something you have to keep in mind with like the full spectrum of your public health approach. Like the government is just not set up to deal with something like this. And on the other hand, like what you're saying is completely right about like the majority of the public honestly just being regular folks and like trying their best. There is still, I feel, that fringe part of society, maybe overplayed because the media pays so much attention to them. But there are segments of our society who, to this day, say that this is just a plot to get Donald Trump out of office, say that this is all a plot by the Democrats to like take our freedoms. And I'm not sure how quick we should be to ignore that segment. Not even like that political fringe, but just like kids going on vacation in South Florida. Like that was a really big thing. Like a lot of kids off during spring break, going out without a mask and not socially distancing. I feel like that kind of attitude, you kind of have to take into account when you're looking at a public health approach. Like, how seriously is your government taking it, and how seriously are your people taking it? Those go hand in hand.
That's interesting, because like then you're proving the point, because like our government isn't taking it seriously.
Exactly. They're not taking it
Right.
seriously. So that's like one massive failure, and that's going to be the biggest failure. Like if the government doesn't
Right.
take it seriously, that's like the biggest concentration of resources within the society.
Right.
So if they're not doing it, then it's going to fall apart. And then on the other hand, if the people definitely don't have the same share of responsibility, but there is like a partial argument to be made that, all right, if people aren't taking it seriously, it doesn't matter what the government does. Like short of saying like, all right, if you go outside, we will fine you. We will we'll enforce like curfews and lockdown orders and things like that. So yeah, my point is done. Go on.
To me, it sounds too much like, because the federal government, there's like, the orange Cheeto in charge is an idiot, and he doesn't, he's totally incompetent. That, means that as citizens, we don't have responsibility to one another. And like the amount of people that came into the store like bitching about having to wear masks at the beginning of the pandemic, I think much less so now, who didn't wear masks, who have to keep reminding, put your mask on, please put your mask on. It's like, we're all in this. When you're not doing that, when you're not like taking that responsibility, you are risking getting everybody else sick. It's like, sorry.
Go ahead.
And then also the state government, like at least in like the subway system, like the New York City subway, they've offered a handout masks. Like, I think it definitely depends from state to state. I think New York is doing a good job now. There was definitely, I think, a lot of mistakes that were made at the beginning, but I think more local level governments can do things. Like, I mean, they have to pick up the slack that Trump left. And so do we. So just because like he dropped the ball doesn't mean there's not a responsibility. And yes, it sucks for us, but we do have to do that.
I'm not saying that this is because of Trump either. Like, I don't know if I would say that, but the issue is that like, if we don't get equal access to resources already, how can we place equal responsibility on all the people? That's what I don't understand.
We can't, honestly. Like, that's what it comes down to. Like, if we're not going to give equal opportunities for people to stay home, like,
Right.
perfect example, essential workers who in our lifetime, we've seen like fry cooks and delivery men or delivery people go from like being, don't end up like those guys, to being like essential, which is an incredible change to me. But if you don't give these people an opportunity to go home, if you don't give any societal support to them, like, you can't be surprised if they're like going out into this.
Two essential workers honestly, up in this bitch.
Yeah, there it is. When you don't give them any kind of support, like, what else is there to be done to support these people? Like, what else is there to be done for these people to like not starve? Honestly, like, that's just how our system is set up. I think with that, like with any statement, no statement can be like completely nuanced. Like, no statement like captures just how complex and how problematic the issue of public health actually is right now. Because if you say like, all right, keep everybody at home, you start to open up questions like, all right, where do we get food? Where do we get
Daycare?
essential supplies if no one is here, like where you're getting daycare and everything like that. I think when we open up the question of, just stay home or just like take care, I think we're generally talking about the general, like the people who do have that option, like the people who are like actively out and about right now, like living without a care in the world and like with no mask on. I think that's the people that they're trying to focus in on, saying like the people who do have a choice, essentially. Like if you do have a choice and you're going against it, that's like a different conversation to be had with you than a person who just has to go to work and who is doing everything they can to protect themselves because they might not have healthcare or might not have access to like quality healthcare or whatever. It's just like it's a nuanced conversation that has so many different caveats that I don't know. I don't know if in the best of times we would have been set up to have that conversation. And America is definitely not going through the best of times. So we start thinking about it in like as a society, we start looking at it as a zero-sum game that gets overly politicized, overly problematized, and we end up with just messed up situation like we have now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's interesting to like hear the divide between Republicans and Democrats on whether or not the government should be open, like whether or not they should be at work. Because honestly, to me, because like if I'm hearing correctly, the Democrats are saying that no, we should stay home and whatever, like being federal workers, right?
Mm.
And the Republicans are like, no, the government should be open, like federal workers should be working XYZ. Is that correct?
I have not heard much of this story. I wouldn't be surprised that lines up, but I don't know.
I guess. Go ahead, because I was asking.
Yeah, well, I guess I've tended to heard that the liberals, I mean, I guess just were more in favor of, staying on lockdown. And I think originally it was lockdown until we can contain the virus, can get it to a manageable level that the hospitals can, have a manageable like level can take in a manageable level of patients, and they're not overwhelmed. And the Republicans have been emphasizing reopening the government and the economy as soon as possible. And then there's like that in between point where if you open up too soon, then the deaths continue, they spike, and then the hospitals are overwhelmed and we have to lock down again. And so we took like one step forward and two steps back. So we don't want to reopen too soon. So we do have to do it at like a certain level. But then also, like, do we want to we can't stay on lockdown indefinitely, which was, I think, a valid criticism that people were making of like the Democrats, that they were just like lockdown. And it's like, no, at least in New York, the hospitals they're not being overwhelmed, even remotely. Mm-hmm. They do have the capacity. So I guess and probably as like individual states, everybody's trying to figure that out at like what speed can you reopen, what things are going to be allowed, what things are not. Like masks, we're going to have to be wearing masks for a while. Like all the restaurants now are doing, outdoor seating. Schools, that's a huge question.
I guess, like, I just wonder more in context of like federal workers, because it seems like a lot of people, well, I don't even know, like from my understanding, people are furloughed for the most part. But like it makes me wonder, like, why? if you work for the government and this is like a time for government, why are people furloughed?
If I had to guess, it's probably another compromise position. Just looking at like another case of essential workers, I guess. I'm not sure which federal employees have been furloughed necessarily, but if it's like secretaries with the Department of Defense or the Department of Education or something like that, it's like, all right, you can probably do this work at home and you'll, or not even, maybe it's like a lot of the work is extraneous and unnecessary, so, or redundant in a way. So they're just like, all right, furlough this and we'll bring you back later on. That would be my guess. And then when you're dealing with positions that you would think are like more essential, like senator or representative in Congress, you have to be like, all right, we should probably stick around for a little bit and figure something out. That would be my guess, if I'm understanding right.
Go ahead.
I'm reading a headline from the Washington Post or article, and it's saying that of the, I want to say, 2 million federal employees, that 4,000 contracted COVID and are filing claims. They're seeking disability compensation. And they are mostly within Homeland Security and Justice and Veterans Affairs.
So how many are furloughed though? Like, I'm sure people contract COVID, but like how many are working and how many aren't working? Because like my question is like, why aren't federal employees working? Like, I guess the bigger question is like, who decided who's essential and who's not? Because to me, like, what another issue I have is like libraries. Like, I get their public spaces, but like, a library is essential to someone to get access to the internet or to find jobs or to not be outside when it's hot. Like, who? And this is like a federal or state level program that we're all paying into, but it's not accessible to the full extent that we're paying for it. So like, how do you decide that something like that isn't essential?
Arbitrarily, I would guess. Like, you just look at it and say like, all right, you and you're essential. We're gonna keep this going. Like, you start looking at the bare necessities, food. Food seems to be like the one that's like standing out. Like, all right, delivery people, grocery workers, you're essential.
Yeah.
That's like, getting I don't know, just like a sandwich that, that deli that you love. Is that essential? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's essential, but it is essential for some people. It's like, oh my God, I haven't had, a cocktail hour with my friends in a long time. Like, even like haircuts, people are like, I want a haircut. Nail techs are like, people are like, come to my house, like do my nails at my place. And it's just like, these things seem to be essential to people that, I don't know, it seems like if you have the money and necessity to do it, then it's okay. I get what you
could
mean.
just come out and say it. Like, as Americans, we're kind of spoiled.
Of course.
In like the best possible way. We're spoiled people. And you know what? That's a good sign for your society in a way. If you have people that have the capacity to be spoiled, I guess. The thing is, exactly. When times of hardship come, you start thinking like, but my haircuts, but my nails. It's not, and no, this is not essential. You can hang out. You're not going anywhere. No one is seeing you. But this is what we've become accustomed to in America. And like, when you get accustomed to something and someone says like, hey, sorry, you can't do happy hour. No brunch. like a couple months. Like, honestly, give us a month. If you could go a month without brunch, we'll be good. People are like, no, we're doing this. I will die for this bottomless mimosa. And here's what has
It's
happened.
interesting though, because like I don't know if haircuts is a good one, but there are people that need help cutting their hair. Like what seems non-essential to some people very well may be essential to other people. Right? So like I think there's an issue in one calling people essential and non-essential, but then also like I don't know, just how things are handled. Like again, access to resources, because like the people that don't need to go to a hairstylist or get their hair cut, they're probably better off than the people that need these people, right? Like that means that there's some level of ability that one person has over the other. To me, right? So like to say like libraries aren't needed, okay, to me, like I haven't visited a library in I don't know how long, but to somebody that's searching for a job or is homeless, a library is needed. That's essential, right? So like
Yeah, it seems like the priorities are not decided equally, or it seems like someone is making sure that like what people are asking for that they'll pay for is definitely like at the top of the line.
Yeah. I guess that in a weird kind of way it makes sense, just because when governments are setting stuff up, it looks like they adjust towards like your average. Like you just try to adjust towards the average. The average person does have like the only thing that they are without a doubt in need of is going to be food, right? Like that's across the board. Everyone has that. Everyone has that need. And then when you're looking at people who like need the library for those like very important resources, just like being cold when it's hot outside or having access to the internet, I guess policymakers are just like, it's easy. Unfortunately, it's, as we've seen, it's super easy to forget these people. And that's just another conversation we need to have in society. Like, what does government work for? Who does government work for? What do we ask of government? And I would hope that we start having that conversation sometime soon, because we've seen that when you don't have that conversation, you end up in a situation like ours where nobody is happy. And a lot of people are suffering unnecessarily.
Okay, COVID talk. What are our bets? When do we all go back to normal? $100 on this.
Ooh. For the States, I'm going to say summer of 2021.
Really? That quickly?
Yeah.
So next summer?
I think
That's not a bad
think so.
bet.
Yeah, we'll figure it out by then. I would hope. I would really, really hope that by summer of 2021, like this time, maybe July, late June, we'll be like, all right, yeah, we can do everything the same kind of way.
that's terrible, but it depends. Like, I guess, what do you mean by normal? Because a part of me is kind of thinking like TSA in the airport, right? Like, before a certain time, things were different, right? But now TSA in the airport's normal. So I think there's going to be this big change that we have to do that will eventually get normal. But
What's it like before that? I don't remember. I don't even remember before TSA. Like 9/11?
Just walk out by.
right, you could go to the terminal. You can meet
Really?
people where they get off the airport. Yeah,
What?
you don't remember that?
No.
My
It's so
old-
different.
Yeah, you meet people. I remember seeing my aunt coming off the plane and walking, and we're just at her gate, right? Like, we just walk back
Oh shit.
to the airport, right?
So like so like the
Exactly.
new normal. Okay.
Right. But like I don't know. With that said, I don't think I question TSA's effectiveness and like the evasiveness that TSA has. Like, I don't know if it needs to be as it is, but it is because people feel better about having that. So I think that's going to be the parallel to me.
Maybe like with masks, like
Never.
people will still
Possibly.
be, or just I guess like the social distance or like whatever
Right.
new ways that we're being socialized right now to like be with each other, might be longer lasting than
Right.
the actual like, I don't know, whatever state enforcements or government enforcements, which
Exactly.
I guess we said wasn't much, depending on where you were.
I'm thinking like probably by the time we have a vaccine, that'll pretty much mostly go back to normal. I guess summer 2021. I'm hoping it'll be sooner than that.
I feel like that is soon because like when it
Yeah, you're
first
right.
started,
We're almost 2021.
yeah, when it
Jesus.
first started, I think it was like January. It like just became 2020. So when people were saying like 2021, I was like, we just got to 2020. Like, are you kidding? This is gonna be so long. But then now that Dom's saying like next summer, I'm like, damn, that's already like, only a year away.
Yeah.
By then-
Honestly, I would not be surprised if other places in the world get like to some level of normalcy a little bit earlier. But we just
Honestly-
keep messing around. Like, I don't know. We could have been done.
From what I've heard, like, I know someone that's in Greece, and he was saying that, like, it's normal. Like, it's absolutely normal.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing. I was like, are you serious?
Really? Oh shit. Okay. Well,
You just gotta take it serious for a month. I'm telling you, just a month, chill, and you'll be good. But
I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if that's what that is, but we'll see, I guess.
okay. Well, then I'm gonna go low. I'm gonna go 8 months.
8 months. So
8
when
months.
is that?
By that time, we'll have the vaccine. But no, because it'll take a long while for them to start distributing it. Okay, fine. I don't want to say 12 months because that's not next summer. Next spring.
Speak it into existence, Elias. We all
Let's
want to
call
get
it
out of here.
April.
Sure. Whatever you gotta do, man. Whatever you gotta do.
I'm calling it next April.
All right, solid. I like it.
Well, I don't know. Now I'm thinking like, because I've heard that a lot. Like this is like the new normal, and like that we're gonna be wearing masks for like so long, and then like even when we have the vaccine, it's gonna take a while for it to distribute it, and like Fauci was basically he was saying that anticipating that when they release the vaccine that he's expecting there's going to be a lot of pushback and people are going to be like, no, I don't want to take this vaccine. They don't know how much pushback there's going to be from anti-vaxxers and probably people who just have like, good reason. No, I don't know, like good reason to be like, it's like if it's the very first vaccine that we produce,
Yeah.
Then like how hard is it going to be to get people to take them and to distribute them?
Well, I guess because at that point it'll be not so much for like necessity, but more like, what is that called? When you're like anticipating something and like you just want to you want to be precautious or take precautions. So I don't know. Yeah, like you said, like maybe it's not because they're anti-vaxxers, but maybe just because like, it's like I've survived through it and seems not to have gotten me, or maybe it did and I'm okay still.
But if you can contract it again, and
I mean, personally for me, I wouldn't think about it that way. It hasn't gotten, at least now, it hasn't gotten me to like this point of like rushing to get vaccinated for it.
Right, but considering like imagine if we all did that. If we were all like, well, it hasn't hurt me. And like something like what is it? Not malaria.
I mean, you would consider me an anti-vaxxer. I don't think I'm an anti-vaxxer. I'm not like against vaccines, but I think in your point of view, you would be like, oh, well, you're an anti-vaxxer because you don't think that it could help, or because maybe you're not thinking about like everyone in this situation. But I think I wouldn't jump to it. And maybe it's because it's like the first version of it, and maybe because I don't think that I don't have to. I don't know if that's selfish or not, but I think for me, it's not something that I would be excited or felt the need to get. But I know that not everyone feels that way because of like, you know, that that like safety measure of like, well, just in case, let me do this. I don't feel that way.
Well, what is it? There's some disease that is back on the rise. Let me see. Because of basically anti-vaxxers.
Like polio, probably.
Is it polio?
If you get taken out by polio, like
But it's like, or measles even. But
measles.
It's
polio. What is this?
Interesting.
1923? Polio.
right, because like
Man.
I
Honestly,
feel like I don't know if that's a fair comparison.
It's just the
don't
harm
know.
of like the anti-vaxxer movement and that idea that like, well, I don't need to do it because it's not affecting me. But like, it's
And
from
I don't
last
think
year.
that's.
Measles cases
I don't.
in the U.S. are highest since measles was eliminated.
Right, but I don't think that one. I kind of don't think that's the mindset in anti-vaxxers. Right, like I honestly, I don't think it's so much that like, yeah, I'm gonna be selfish. Like I think that there's a fear of disability, which is problematic still, but yeah, like, and then on top of that, the doctor that promoted anti-vax theory is still out promoting anti-vax theory, especially to like immigrant populations, right? So like, I feel like there's more to the anti-vax story than people just being selfish.
mhm. Yeah, it's definitely based in, for a lot of people, it's definitely based in like extremely legitimate fears of just like historically what vaccines were used for. I remember like the Tuskegee experiments were a thing.
Thank
where,
you.
Like, yeah, where just like the
Thank
US
you.
government injected black people with like random strains of disease just to see what would happen. And
Syphilis. Sorry.
syphilis. And when you have like that kind of history, it's not super hard to understand why people will be like, no, we would prefer not to this time. And even now, in the case of COVID, there was a big uproar in a lot of African countries because a French health minister was caught on mic saying like, all right, we should test the vaccine in African countries before we like bring it over here just to see, let's make sure. And when you hear stuff like that, you start to look at these things like really sideways, like, all right, which one is worse, the disease or the cure? So you end up with a lot of legitimate fear. And I think Dr. Fauci definitely has a very legitimate case, or is very right to be concerned about how willing people are going to be to like test out this vaccine when it comes, or like any person would be. Any person should be concerned just because you don't know what'll happen. At the end, when you're injecting yourself with this stuff. It's like, it's science, sure, but it takes a lot of faith to assume that the science is gonna necessarily come to the best case or the best outcome for you. People get legitimately scared, and sometimes you can look at their fears and be like, all right, this is a bit excessive, but sometimes it's like, all right, you have a very legitimate case for it.
Okay, given all that, could we still say that there's some responsibility of society, like if this is going to eliminate this disease that's killing thousands and thousands of people, like all the like constantly, like isn't there a responsibility for us to, if we had this way to prevent it and eliminate it, don't we have a responsibility to do that?
come back to you with an ancient,
Jesus Christ.
story. I love stories. I love allegories, man.
Oh
I
God.
love them so much. So once a council of mice got together and they started to talk about like a cat, and the cat was just bodying them as cats will do.
He
I
was
don't
what
think this
them?
is how the story was written. He was eating all of them up like cats will do. And so they said, and so one of the mice got up and said, like, I have an idea. Why don't we just put a bell on the cat? That way, when the cat is coming, we're gonna know when he's coming, and we can all scatter and flee. And then everyone's like, all right, excellent idea. Yeah, we should do it. And then one of the oldest mice gets up and asks, all right, this is a very good idea. One question, who is gonna go up and put the bell on the cat?
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, all right, that idea is dead because we don't want to do that. And I feel like that perfectly applies to the situation here. In like a societal scale, yes, of course, it's a great idea. But who's gonna be the one to say like, yeah, sure, I'll do the test run? That's a hard thing to ask of someone.
Well, yeah. I mean, like somebody's just got to take it on the chin.
And I
All
feel
right,
We
like
all
with
do.
that.
We all do. We all do.
what I feel like there's different. We're talking about different things, I guess, like testing versus having a vaccination that's been tested
Mhm.
and is proven whatever. It's
Well,
like,
So say the CDC comes out and says this is our first anti-vax drug, and it's I don't know, whatever company that has produced it, and they've done 100,000 tests, and we've considered it safe.
okay, because the part I was going to get to is like the people that are probably going to be tested on are, I'm assuming, going to be ones that, how I'm seeing it play out is that like they're going to offer money for people to take this test, right? So the people that need money are going to be the ones to test and risk whatever for us to be able to have a vaccine that's been tested, right? So I think the most vulnerable people are going to be the ones that take it to the chin for us to get this vaccine. Now, what happens after the vaccine's been tested? Are they going to make it mandatory like they do like meningitis? Like, so like you can't go to school without the shot? Or is it going to be a vaccine where like if you want to travel somewhere, like you have to like, or is it going to be optional like the flu shot? Like, who knows? And then also I think there's another question of like, who's going to pay for this, right? Because if it's not free, then like if not everyone has access to it, how, what does that mean? Like, so who are we trying to protect? Just the people that can pay for it, or virtually everyone? If you're going to make it free.
I would think
What?
taxpayers we'd be paying for it.
Testing isn't free.
How much does testing cost?
I think like $30.
So I'm like, I think there's a larger talk about the healthcare system as a whole, right? Because like if we have to pay for any sort of treatment, then the people that can't pay are the ones that are going to suffer.
I guess if you're super optimistic about it, you could say like, at a certain point, like if enough people are immunized, that's how you say that word, I think, then you gotta get like that herd immunization. Like that's the term I've heard thrown around. Like there are so many people who are protected, like there's no way for it to effectively spread at the same rates that we're seeing right now, where no one is immune to it, or very few people are immune to it. So perhaps that could be like the thought that they're pointing towards when they're talking about immunization. Like it doesn't have to be everybody, it just has to be enough that the disease doesn't spread as rapidly as we see. I hope at least. And then I guess you can like look at field studies too, like polio is still making a comeback, which I'm still surprised about. And say like, all right, isn't everyone immunized for polio? I guess not. And when you have like just a little bit of spread, like within a local community, it can spread a lot within that community.
Well, that was a
I
problem
don't know how that
in
would play
Africa
out.
where they were trying to, I think, eliminate polio and HIV, and they were doing really well at eliminating them. But then all of a sudden, COVID's happening, and so they have to divert these resources now to COVID testing.
Yeah.
And
But why?
you know, it's setting back. What do you mean?
I mean, divert resources. Why? Huh? How is it not? How? Why? I just don't understand. How is it possible? How is there not enough resources?
I mean, the pie's only so big, and like they're like, well,
No, it's not. Like, if the pie, I just don't get it. What?
Yeah.
What? Where's this money going? So you mean to tell me that they can't do two things at once?
Unfortunately, for a lot of African countries, like the public health systems are just not super developed.
And I'm not even saying like this is on the African countries. I'm saying like as a whole. Like if we know, like in the whole pandemic on the earth, right? Like if we know that people are struggling to have resources to do both immunizations or treatment for HIV and polio and COVID, how come there's a lack of resources? Like no one else on earth can help out? Like I don't understand how this isn't like a whole.
Well, everyone
effort.
else on earth is kind of like trying to figure it out for themselves, I think. Like that's ultimately what it comes back to. Like when you have a government, the assumption is that the government is responsible for the people under its direct influence in a way. So there are a lot of groups and a lot of international organizations that are offering support for lower income countries, but it's at one level, it's like not to the level that a lot of these countries need. At another part of the issue is that it all came so quickly that no one really knew how to like reorient towards the very real threat of it. And in a third part of the issue, like a lot of these places, just institutionally, because of failures from corrupt leaders in a lot of places, like they weren't as prepared as they should have been to handle a lot of these issues. So like in each place, like so many things up in the air that it makes it hard to figure out, all right, exactly what way are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do with the resources that we do have?
Yeah, I think I would think the main point would be it's hard to like offer assistance like wealthier countries because they're also being overwhelmed. But then at the same time, like that was my first instinct. That was like my knee-jerk reaction. It's like, yeah, we're all dealing with this, so we're all being overwhelmed. But then at the same time, I do have to like, you have to weigh that against like, some people are actually doing really well, right? What was it? What bank was it? But they were seeing like some of their best numbers ever. Do you remember what bank it was?
Wall Street is humming right now.
Yeah, and it's like
record highs.
Well, geez, could have fooled me. Doesn't seem like that over here.
Jeff Bezos, they said he added like 13 billion. Something like, no, it might not have been 13 billion, but just like an obscene amount of money during this whole thing. So then you ask like, all right, if you're doing
it's like, what the hell, man? Like, how did you make that money? You made it off of us.
Exactly. But that go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry,
please go on. No, please.
I was gonna say that also worries me because like the profitability of having people stay inside and be online like that's terrifying. Because like if we get to a point where like how do we know we're going to get to a point where we'll be encouraged to go back outside when that means Amazon's going to lose money or like Google's going to lose money? Like, wouldn't that work against their interests? It's like, how can we?
probably the whole economy does better when people are working because they're making more money and spending more money. Like if we don't have that money to spend, then, but yeah, I think like a lot of things like Netflix and all these streaming services are seeing like their numbers going up. But
Right.
Mm.
And I think because it's, again, it's scary because like you don't know what companies are lobbying to what politicians. So like how do I don't know, it's just too much that like could be going on
Mm-hmm.
that we just have no idea about.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yes, Sadie, come with conspiracies. I like it. I like it. No, yes.
No.
You're talking about businessmen talking to politicians. That's a conspiracy, Mom. You call it whatever you want. Yes.
Maybe.
Is it conspiracy or is that like factual?
is that just the way it works?
Yeah.
Because like
A lot of these conspiracies are just the way things work.
Right.
You know, right?
Both.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I just can't imagine the amount of money like all these internet-based companies have gotten because of this, right? I was talking to a friend and he was saying that like before all of this, we were seeing a push to like minimize notifications, like with Apple, like screen time and like going outside, like all of that has completely gone out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're seeing YouTube like stay home with me, hashtag whatever. But like, is it because you want us to stay home to like try and get over an illness, or is it so we can stay on your website longer, right? So you can make more money.
Problem with YouTube is that they would make more money. Ordinarily, they would make more money from more eyeballs on their platform, but the thing is there's not as many advertisers because everybody's broke, so there's not as many advertisers who are willing to pay YouTube. So just like as like the economy does poorly as a whole, probably would affect. I imagine that it would also negatively impact them, just because there's like less money to spend on ads and from the public.
And then generally, I think this is the issue with all corporations, is that corporations at the end of the day, they are made up of people. Like anything is made up of people. Like Apple is just people. Amazon is just people. And, people, they have their own inclinations. They have their own political leads. And it could be that a lot of these people are just like thinking that this is all in good faith, that we do want to actually encourage people to stay home in a public health aspect. But you can't divorce that from the fact that, corporations, their main incentive is to make money. Like a person has their own interest, but a corporation has an interest that might be separate from a individual person's interest. So it's like super hard to figure out like what their intentions actually are and how sincere anything is. And it could definitely apply to the public health aspect here, but right now I'm really thinking about it in like the context of a lot of the support you see from corporations for Black Lives Matter or for gay rights or things like that. Like how much do you actually believe in this stuff, or how much of it is actually like you see that it sells well? And honestly, we'll probably never know, just because it's tough to like actually get an honest conversation or just get in the same room with a lot of these people and figure out like, all right, what do you actually think about this stuff? What does Jeff Bezos think about the COVID response? What does Tim Cook think about Black Lives Matter?
Copying everybody else's ideas and making money off of them.
Hey, steal like an artist, man. If it works, it works.
Yeah, I'm so tired of that guy. So tired of all of them.
Jeff Bezos?
Just all those people.
Elon Musk, you tired of Elon?
Yeah, him too. He just
I'm good. Elon's got to work out.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, okay. I've been reading Sapiens, right?
Oh,
okay.
Another good book.
Yeah, and so have y'all read it? Like,
I've read parts of it.
I liked it. I just thought he was so negative.
History is kind of negative, Elias. I don't know if you noticed. It's like
It's a long list of failures.
Cause like it's funny because you say like corporations are people, and then but they're like not people, and then like in the book he was talking about how a corporation is something that exists outside of anyone, right? Like everyone could be fired, but the corporation still exists, right? It's like its own entity. So
We just agreed that this thing is a thing.
right. So like how much is it that we need to talk to the right people that work for a corporation or an entity, and how much of it is just this entity as it's set up does what it does?
That's a compelling point, like a really compelling point. Like, because at the end of the day, Tim Cook, he's just
Wait, I don't
he's
get
the
that
CEO
point.
of Apple. It's like if I can try to translate, it's like, okay, we know that individuals are making up this company, but there's still Apple exists outside as an entity outside of the people, right? Like you could get rid of Steve Jobs, you could get rid of Tim Cook, but you can get rid of Steve Wozniak, but you still have Apple. Like Apple is something that like transcends them, all of them. So it's kind of like Apple has its interests and Tim Cook has its interests. So how worthwhile is it to really talk to Tim Cook if he's like beholden to Apple? See, like who speaks for Apple, really? Like, it's a tough thing to figure out. Like, do you kind of see the point? Or
Yeah, that's crazy. I never thought of it that way.
yeah, I think there's a theory. There's a theory in psychology. It's called Gestalt theory. Way back when I took AP Psych in junior year of high school and felt like I
There
knew
you
everything.
go.
Yeah, there we go. Gestalt theory essentially comes out to mean that the sum, wait, I remember, yes, an entity is different than the sum of its parts. Like you put a lot of things together and individually, all of these things are something in of themselves, but when you put them together, you're not necessarily going to have something that equals its parts. And Apple is a perfect example of that. You're putting a bunch of people together, but the thing they came out with is not necessarily representative of them. It became something different. It became something new. So now who speaks for the new thing?
It should be a cooperative.
The People's Republic of Apple? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Just make their own country. Just buy.
Honestly, they have the budget for it. They really have the budget for it. But then, like, that opens up a whole new problem. Seriously, like, who do we trust our entirety of our things to? Like, if we want to like transition to some of the other topics while we're winding down, it looks like one of the things I had on my list was like TikTok. TikTok was recently banned and forced to, and the company who runs it, they said like, all right, we will yield our American operations to an American firm and they'll do their thing with it. The thing is, even with all of this stuff, even if the Chinese government is not actively involved with TikTok anymore, it's still like people privately holding on to our data and we don't know who actually has their data. It's not like whoever runs TikTok, it's not like the founders, it's just like TikTok as an entity. And we don't know what the intentions of TikTok as an entity are. I mean, one obvious one is to make money, sure. And maybe that's it. But we don't know like what else exists outside of that. So it's strange. And then you read all these articles about even outside of like foreign governments collecting our data, private American companies like Apple and Facebook have been caught selling our data to foreign governments and the American government. So like, who is really responsible for this? What are we doing with it?
Would you recommend that other people read *Sapiens*?
I'm only at like chapter 6. I think I'm like maybe a third of the way through. But yes, it's like a really like big picture book. Like it blows my mind. It makes me so uncomfortable. But I mean, if you like to be in that space of like, oh my gosh, like this, all of this is connected, then yeah, sure, you can.
I haven't
Check
read
it
it yet, but I listened to a podcast that was making a lot of reference to it. It was on Personality Hacker podcast. If you like the book, I think you would like the podcast because I didn't read the book, but Elias has told me about it. So when I saw that episode, I was like, oh, let me check this out. And even though I hadn't read it, it seemed so interesting, like from what they were talking about.
It's super interesting. Yeah. And then that's interesting because like you were saying with data and entities or corporations and people that run the corporation, like I don't know, like you said, like who do we talk to? Like, are these Black Lives Matter statements from different corporations in the interest of the corporation or the people that work at the corporation? Like who what does it all mean? Like, and then we have like dark money, like so these corporations can pay off different politicians to do whatever they want, like, and it could be completely outside of the CEO or anybody that works there, but it's just the interest of that company. I don't know. It just freaks me out the more I think about it.
Yeah. It is a rabbit hole. It is such a rabbit hole. Like right now, just think about this. The best representation I can come up with this is South Park. Like with all things, South Park just like comes up with the best ideas. And one of them was that they have the head of Disney, the company, Mickey Mouse. Like he's just Mickey Mouse is a person, just like walking around in the world. He's just like, ha ha ha, and he's like, it's just ridiculous. But the thing is, Mickey Mouse is a thug. Like he'll just like walk up on people, it's like, oh. It seems like you have a problem with our bottom line, huh? And then he just like runs up and like pin slaps them in the face. They beat up Winnie the Pooh. They beat up Winnie the Pooh. Because Winnie the Pooh is like a symbol of resistance against the communist regime in China. So Mickey Mouse.
Winnie the Pooh is, yeah, he's a Taoist.
What? Okay, sure, we can get it. But Mickey Mouse like just ran up to one of the main characters and said like, oh, you see, we've got a little bit of a problem with a fat yellow turd who's messing with my bottom line, so you bring him in. He's just like yelling at something, and he's like beating up the main members of the board of Disney. And honestly, I feel like that's like the perfect encapsulation of it. Like the members of the board of Disney want to do something different, they want to do something good, but Mickey Mouse just rolls up on them and is like, hey, this is what we gotta do because we are the corporation, and the corporation's interests are different than the people's. Moral of the story, read Sapiens and watch South Park if you want to be an informed citizen.